The Houston Rockets fired Steven Silas
Holy shit.
after he went 59 and 177 in 3 seasons with them. Now, John, I want to ask you this question. I want you to go first because you watch a lot of Houston Rockets basketball.
Why?
Sadly.
And I want to ask you, John, with this firing of Steven
Do you
Silas,
actually?
I watch half their games.
Why, John?
Oh, that's 40 games too many. But go ahead.
John, you're hurting yourself.
when it comes to the Rockets, John, do you think that this firing was fair for Steven Silas?
I never felt like Steven Silas was the man for the job. I never felt like he was ready. And honestly, he got hired here because Dallas's generational offense in 2020, 21, Luka Doncic. And
You want to know an
ultimately-
interesting stat about that?
Let's hear it.
The historic offense that year, the offensive rating was 115.9. This year, the Mavericks offense, which ranks 6th, is 115.9.
Exactly. I mean, each year we see it get better and better. Steven Silas was brought in to coach Russell Westbrook, who wanted him to get hired, and James Harden. But in that same week, James Harden's requesting a trade. Russell Westbrook's being sent to Washington. And he never connected with the players. It was a team that really just had a placeholder head coach in Silas, who unfairly was really just the scapegoat, I think, by a lot of Rocket fans. Now, do I think Steven Silas is a good head coach, a good player development coach? No, I don't. But there are articles, an article that just came out by The Athletic, which said Eric Gordon went to Steven Silas and was like, yo, we're doing too much freelance. I'm the most experienced guard here. Let me have a larger role in the offense. And Silas said, yeah, champ, I can't do that. It's not in my control. I can't even pick who I want to be the primary focus of our offense. It's the higher-ups. Raphael Stone, their GM, who has proven nothing in the NBA, was in player meetings, in actual practices, interrupting Silas and saying how the players should be doing drills. What track record does Raphael Stone have other than being Daryl Morey's right-hand man? He has none. And then I look at Rockets ownership. They're just trying to get Victor Wembanyama. And Silas succeeded in that task. But had he have won more games, not giving them a chance to have a top 5 pick in this year's draft, he would have also been failing the task. So his name gets dragged into the mud. I don't think he's a good head coach. But I also think, man, if the Rockets think firing him is going to solve their issues, they're in for a rude awakening this offseason. Because $60 million in cap space, they have to fix this team prompt out. That first round pick they have for this going year, shit, that's top 4 protected. They're probably not keeping that. That's going straight to OKC.
When I think about Steven Silas, I feel bad for him because he's been through a lot this year in himself and his personal life. But also, Steven Silas took this job thinking he was going to coach Russell Westbrook and James Harden. Russell Westbrook vouched for Steven Silas before he got the job. And then when Silas got hired, he requested a trade 2 weeks later. Steven Silas was supposed to coach a team that was going to compete in the Western Conference, and then they turned into a rebuilding tank job. And you mentioned it perfectly, John. Raphael Stone would sit in meetings. He would interrupt Silas to the point that Silas had to go to the front office to tell him he can't do this anymore. We had proof of the mismanagement in Houston with John Wall's interviews. With Steven Silas and John Wall had a great relationship, but Silas told John Wall that he couldn't play him. He couldn't start him because John Wall said that it's best for the young guys if they earn their starting spot from me. But the management, the ownership, the front office did not want John Wall to take away any minutes away from the young players, therefore having no real competitive atmosphere. And Silas had no say in the matter of whether John Wall could stay with the team or not. It was the point that John Wall just stopped being with the Rockets in the front office rather than him just sit at home and collect his money. So when I look at this Steven Silas era with the Rockets, I think about a guy who didn't get a chance to coach a team. I think about a guy who was fucked over by the front office repeatedly, and he really didn't get a chance to implement anything. Now, I'm not faulting Steven Silas. It's obvious that he's an offensive coach and he has he doesn't have any real defensive background, and that's a big reason why the Rockets struggled defensively. But also the Rockets left him with some personalities that were hard to deal with. Christian Wood, Kevin Porter Jr., they weren't the easiest of personalities. Then you have these rookies that come in that want everything handed to them right away, who become instantly the faces of the franchise. The two things I will blame Silas for is not realizing Alperen Şengün was good earlier on. Before this season, Bruno Fernando was the starter over him. And defensively, not having a real identity defensively or schemes defensively to cover up for some of the players' mishaps. But outside of that, I mean, Steven Silas got no real chance. He didn't. I mean, from the start, he was bound to fail.
John, I'm still amazed that you watch 40 games. It's fucking mind-blowing. You sit there and you watch 40 Rockets games. It's really hard to watch them. You know, I'm listening to both of you guys. I definitely feel a little bit more saddened for Steven Silas. Like you said, I didn't know about the stuff prior to like the James Harden, Westbrook. I didn't know about that stuff. I've just looked at it from this year's standpoint. He was given this roster. He was supposed to nurture and kind of lead these young group of men, lead these young guys. And it's kind of been a high school AAU parade over there. You know, it's kind of been Austin Rivers has spoken about it. John Wall's spoken about it. Eric Gordon kind of gives his spiel about it in a less direct way, like, we're not improving. That was hilarious. He said they didn't improve. They're not improving. They don't improve. So players have spoken about it. And I think Silas, the way he goes about his post games, you've seen he's very emotional. You can tell he's trying. You know, he's definitely there trying. But I think the point that the fact that the players don't respect him, the young guys, I think goes to show that maybe he doesn't have a strong enough backbone, or maybe he doesn't have a strong enough voice. And you need that as a coach. That is one of the most important things. You need a voice. I mean, you can look at Ime over there in Boston. He had a voice. The players respected him. Look what happened. Finals, they got cooked, but finals. So that's the most important part.
Boston six.
Yeah, cooked. But that's the most important part, you know. So I think to have a voice is important. Silas didn't have that in Houston. And I don't know who is. Who's gonna go there and guys are gonna listen? It's possible, but these are young. These are guys younger than us. These are guys John age. They're literally John age.
Yes.
So these are young guys, young adults. They're still immature. They kind of get to do whatever they want there in Houston. There is no identity. There's no, and defensively, I can't even blame Silas for not having a defensive identity because none of them play defense. There's not a single guy, maybe Jason Tate, the oldest rookie ever. Like he doesn't play defense. He plays defense okay, but there's not a single guy over there that you can sit here and build the foundation with. And right. I think that's the struggling problem for Silas. And I think ultimately, I understand Silas is probably going to be the scapegoat. It's obviously bigger than Silas, but for him not having a voice in the locker room, that's a him thing. For him not being able to develop anybody on the roster, that's a him thing. Sengun wasn't even a him development. He just finally started playing him, and Sengun just showed you he's good. So I think Silas definitely gets a little bit of the blame, but he's definitely not the main problem for Houston being a downfall.
And the thing that's pretty nuts is management is quote-unquote telling him that he can't do this, he can't do that. And he abides by all their rules and regulations, and then ultimately he still ends up getting fired. So really there was no winning for Silas at this point in time. Of course, we want to talk about the record. It wasn't there. Nothing was there for him in terms of trying to defend him as a coach, unfortunately. The only thing you could use to defend him is that he really had a shortened leash and what he was capable and what he was allowed to do as the head coach. And if I was Steven Silas, honestly, I'd be happy. I'd be happy that I'm no longer the Rockets coach because now I can go to another team, potentially be a high-level assistant coach. I can then, give myself a little bit more of a resume and then put myself out there to potentially be a high-level coaching candidacy in the future, potentially. What's very tough for me also to sit with is, of course, you mentioned Joel. He has gone through a lot this season. He lost his father. He mentioned how that was a huge part and how this was already a struggle for him in terms of the Rockets. And then you add the personal aspect of real life issues on top of it as well. I can only imagine the mental battle that's going on with Steven Silas himself. So, of course, I want to give him my thoughts and my prayers as well on that side note, regardless of how long ago it was that he lost his father. But if I'm Steven, I look at this as a positive. The Rockets, where we can look at the outlook and say that, hey, we like some of these players. We believe that they're in a solid spot to acquire Victor Wembanyama, potentially a Scoot Henderson, potentially a Brandon Miller. They're in a prime spot to acquire one of these three prospects, high-level prospects, if you ask me. And this team could be very interesting. But if I'm Silas, now I don't have to worry about looking over my shoulder and any single move I make or do is being magnified and overlooked at, overanalyzed. So for Steven, look at this as a positive because now you can go and give yourself a better reputation than what you acquired over with the Rockets with a 59 and 117 record.
Oh my God.
It's ugly. You go from 17 to 20 to 22 wins these last 3 seasons. I don't care who you are. I mean, you could call it a scapegoat, whatever. You're not going to be a head coach, really, no matter who you are. If you're 3 games or you're 3 years there, you don't even touch 25 wins, right? The roster's bad. And when he got there, you guys mentioned it, he got screwed. You think you're going to coach Westbrook and James Harden, a team who has shown to make deep playoff runs. D'Antoni leaves, and you think you could be, this next young offensive head coach to really make your mark in the NBA. And like a fucking week into the season, shit just turns on its head. Westbrook is gone. Harden requested trade, and all of a sudden you're rebuilding when you thought you'd be competing. So it's a situation that damn near any coach, I don't care how good you are, you're going to go in that situation, you're probably going to fail. I don't really know. I know guys want like Ime and all these guys who've had success elsewhere, but if you're going to have a team that's this devoid of talent, you're going to lose a lot of games. You have potential with guys like Jalen Green and Sengun and Kevin Porter. Like there's guys that are young that have talent and can be developed, but right now they're not ready to compete. And we mentioned the defensive, lack of effort. Offensively, they were last in assists and 12th in isolation. So it really goes to show the type of offense they're run that there really is no sets. And I think even Jalen Green went to Silas. I read the report on The Athletic as well. Jalen Green even went to Steven Silas and said, I think we should run more sets, more of a controlled offense, a fundamental offense that there's actually plays and not just pick up basketball. We're going to go one-on-one the entire game. And it seemed obviously not to work because the offense never got turned around and the defense was even worse. So Silas was in a situation that no matter what he would have done, he would have got fired unless you completely overachieve and somehow win 30 games with this team. But it's not going to happen. I think for the future, I'm with you, Drew. Get out of Houston. Get out of that kind of toxic environment where there's reports that the GM is in there during practice and calling out, different, remarks on terms of like defensive assignments. Like the GM should straight up not be doing. And Silas had to deal with that. So I think it's best for him to move on. He'll find an assistant job somewhere, hopefully with a good organization that could, kind of build up his reputation again, because he's only 49 years old. It's not like this guy is ancient and can be out of the league anytime soon. He's still a young coach that has promise. Obviously, his time with Dallas before he went to Houston got him that job for his offensive mindset. But Houston was just a situation that he was never going to succeed in, unfortunately.